The Curse of Shadow Mountain. Chapter 1, The Expedition. 5 friends, Alex, Rachel, Tom, Lisa, and Mark, had been planning their mountain hiking expedition for months. Shadow Mountain, with its towering peaks and dense forests, had always intrigued them. Legends spoke of eerie occurrences and mysterious disappearances, but the friends dismissed these stories as mere folklore. Excitement buzzed among the group as they packed their gear and prepared for the adventure. Alex, the group's leader, was a seasoned hiker, and his confidence reassured the others. They set off early in the morning, eager to conquer the mountain and experience its natural beauty. Chapter 2, The Ascent. The journey began with laughter and light-hearted banter as they ascended the lower slopes. The trail was well-trodden, and the weather was perfect. As they climbed higher, the forest grew denser, and the path became more challenging. Still, the friends pressed on, driven by their shared sense of adventure. As they reached a clearing, they paused to rest and take in the breathtaking view. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the landscape. It was then that they noticed the silence, no birdsong, no rustling leaves, just an eerie stillness that sent shivers down their spines. "Have you guys noticed how quiet it is?" Lisa asked, her voice tinged with unease. "It's probably just because we're so high up," Alex replied, though he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Chapter 3, The Cabin. As dusk approached, the group decided to set up camp for the night. They found an old, abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. The structure was weathered and overgrown with vines, but it offered shelter from the elements. "This place looks creepy," Rachel said, eyeing the cabin warily. "It's better than sleeping outside," Tom replied, pushing open the creaky door. The interior was dusty and dimly lit, with cobwebs hanging from the rafters. The group set up their sleeping bags and gathered around a small fire for warmth. As they settled in, Mark noticed a dusty old journal on a rickety table. He picked it up and began to read aloud. The entries spoke of strange happenings, unexplained noises, ghostly apparitions, and a sense of impending doom. "This is just some old ghost story," Alex scoffed, but the others weren't so sure. Chapter 4, The First Night. That night, as the friends drifted off to sleep, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Rachel was the first to wake, startled by a distant whisper. She sat up, her heart pounding, and listened intently. The whispers grew louder, seemingly coming from the walls of the cabin. "Alex, wake up," she whispered urgently, shaking him awake. Alex groggily sat up, and soon the entire group was awake, listening to the eerie whispers that surrounded them. "Let's get out of here," Lisa suggested, fear evident in her voice. "We can't leave in the middle of the night," Alex replied. "It's too dangerous. We'll wait until morning." The friends huddled together, trying to ignore the whispers that seemed to mock their fear. Sleep was impossible, and they spent the night in a state of heightened anxiety. Chapter 5, The Markings. At dawn, the whispers ceased, and the friends cautiously exited the cabin. They decided to continue their ascent, hoping to leave the unsettling experience behind. As they packed up, Tom noticed strange markings etched into the wood of the cabin, symbols that none of them recognized. "These weren't here last night," Tom said, his voice trembling. "Let's just get out of here," Rachel urged, her fear mounting. The group hurriedly packed their gear and resumed their hike. As they climbed higher, the forest grew darker, and the air grew colder. The sense of unease that had plagued them since the previous night intensified. Chapter 6, The Fog. As they neared the summit, a thick fog descended upon them, obscuring their path. Visibility was reduced to mere feet, and the friends found themselves disoriented and lost. "We should stop and wait for the fog to clear," Alex suggested, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. They set up a makeshift camp, huddling together for warmth. The fog seemed to seep into their bones, chilling them to the core. Strange shapes moved within the mist, and they heard faint, echoing footsteps. "We're not alone," Lisa whispered, her eyes wide with fear. As night fell, the fog grew thicker, and the friends felt an overwhelming sense of dread. They clung to each other, desperate for any sense of security. Chapter 7, The Apparition. In the middle of the night, Rachel woke to the sound of footsteps approaching their camp. She shook Alex awake, and together they peered into the fog. A figure emerged, shrouded in mist and barely visible. "Who's there?" Alex called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it moved closer, its features becoming clearer. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and empty. She reached out a hand, and as she did, the friends felt an icy chill wash over them. "Stay back," Tom shouted, but the apparition continued to advance. Suddenly, the woman let out a blood-curdling scream, and the fog erupted into chaos. Shapes moved all around them, whispering and wailing. The friends scrambled to their feet, desperately trying to find a way out. Chapter 8, The Descent. In their panic, the group became separated. Alex and Rachel ran together, while Tom, Lisa, and Mark took a different path. The fog seemed to close in around them, and the friends could barely see each other. "We need to find the others," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "We will," Alex replied, though he had no idea how. They stumbled through the fog, calling out for their friends, but there was no response. Meanwhile, Tom, Lisa, and Mark found themselves at the edge of a steep cliff. The fog obscured the drop, and they couldn't see the bottom. "We can't go this way," Mark said, panic in his voice. "Let's head back and find Alex and Rachel," Tom suggested. As they turned to leave, the ground beneath them gave way. The friends tumbled down the slope, landing in a tangle of limbs at the bottom. Bruised and disoriented, they struggled to their feet. Chapter 9, The Cave. Alex and Rachel continued their descent, desperately trying to find their way back to the trail. They stumbled upon a cave entrance, its dark maw beckoning them inside. "We need to take shelter," Alex said, guiding Rachel into the cave. Inside, the cave was cold and damp, the walls slick with moisture. They found a small alcove and huddled together, trying to stay warm. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of their own breathing. "Do you think the others are okay?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope so," Alex replied, though doubt gnawed at him. As they sat in the darkness, they heard a faint, rhythmic tapping. It grew louder, echoing through the cave. The friends looked around, but there was no source for the sound. "What's making that noise?" Rachel asked, fear creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Alex replied. "But we need to stay calm." Chapter 10, The Reunion. Tom, Lisa, and Mark struggled through the fog, their injuries slowing them down. They eventually found their way back to the trail, where they heard Alex and Rachel's voices calling out. "Alex! Rachel!" Tom shouted, relief flooding through him. The group reunited, embracing each other and sharing their experiences. They decided to find shelter for the night and leave the mountain at first light. "We found a cave," Alex said. "It's not far from here. We can take shelter there." The friends made their way to the cave, the fog finally beginning to lift. As they entered, they noticed the same rhythmic tapping sound that Alex and Rachel had heard. "What is that?" Lisa asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Let's just stay together and keep an eye out," Alex replied, though his own fear was evident. Chapter 11, The Discovery. As they explored the cave, they discovered a hidden chamber at the back. Inside, they found ancient carvings on the walls, depicting scenes of ritualistic sacrifices and dark, shadowy figures. "This place has a history," Mark said, his voice trembling. "A dark one." They also found an old, tattered book written in a language they couldn't understand. The illustrations, however, were clear enough, grim depictions of suffering and torment. "We need to get out of here," Rachel urged. "This place is cursed." But as they turned to leave, the tapping grew louder, and the air grew colder. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, skeletal figure with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. "Who dares enter my domain?" the figure hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Chapter 12, The Confrontation. The friends backed away, their fear palpable. The figure advanced, its bony fingers reaching out towards them. "We mean no harm," Alex said, his voice shaking. "We just want to leave." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed through the cave. "You cannot leave. You belong to the mountain now." Desperate, the friends searched for a way to escape. They noticed a narrow passage leading deeper into the cave and made a run for it, the figure close behind. The passage twisted and turned, and the friends struggled to keep up with each other. The air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to close in around them. Chapter 13, The Final Stand. They emerged into a large, open chamber, where a faint light flickered from above. The figure was right behind them, its twisted grin growing wider. "We have to fight," Tom said, picking up a large rock. The friends armed themselves with whatever they could find and prepared to defend themselves. The figure lunged at them, and they fought back with all their strength. It was a desperate struggle, and the friends were exhausted. But their determination and will to survive gave them strength. They managed to push the figure back, and it let out a blood-curdling scream. "You cannot defeat me," it screeched. "I am eternal." But the friends pressed on, refusing to give up. Finally, with one last effort, they managed to trap the figure beneath a pile of rocks. Chapter 14, The Escape. Exhausted and battered, the friends made their way out of the cave. The fog had lifted, and the dawn light broke through the trees, casting a warm glow over the mountain. They stumbled down the trail, their fear giving way to relief as they finally reached the base of the mountain. They vowed never to speak of their ordeal, knowing that no one would believe them. As they drove away, they couldn't shake the feeling that the mountain's curse still lingered. The memories of the skeletal figure and the eerie tapping haunted their dreams for years to come. The friends moved on with their lives, but the experience on Shadow Mountain had changed them forever. They never returned to the mountain, and the cabin remained abandoned, a silent witness to the horrors they had endured. The legend of Shadow Mountain grew, with new stories of strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions. The mountain remained a place of mystery and fear, its dark history etched into the memories of those who dared to venture there. And so, the curse of Shadow Mountain lived on, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting adventurers to fall into its grasp.
Don't forget to subscribe.